I start speaking, I first like to just take a minute to say, thank you for having me. And I always just go to the Creator and ask Him to just guide me, direct me. And I always ask that the words of my mouth, sweet meditations of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. Because I'm telling you, when you're supporting someone who is incarcerated, you're going to have to go to your Creator a lot. If you're not spiritual, when you first start supporting somebody who's incarcerated, trust me, you will eventually have to find your faith, because you're going to have some good days and some bad days. And that's what we're here to talk about this evening. We're here to talk about how to truly support someone that you love who's incarcerated. Is your husband incarcerated? Your husband? See, I have a son who's incarcerated. He's done 11 years so far, and he's got about 7 more to go. And like I was telling Jenny tonight, when you have a loved one, especially your spouse who's incarcerated, you as the wives are serving the second sentence, because you're serving that time right along with your husband, because you're together, and some days are going to be good and some days are going to be bad. And I always tell people it takes a special kind of woman to support a man who is locked up. You're going to hear flack from friends. You're going to hear flack from family. People are going to say, girl, why you doing it? You young, you looking good. Why you wasting your time? But see, everybody here took vows. You said to love and to honor, thickness, rich and poor, sickness and in health. And I think somewhere along the way they're going to have to put, if he's incarcerated, because you don't walk away. You took those vows, those were sacred vows, and you're doing what you're supposed to do in God's eyes. You're supposed to be there for your husband. So I always tell people that trying to support someone who is incarcerated takes a special kind of person, and you have to be willing to give more than you'll ever receive for this time, and it's just a realization. You're going to be sending packages, you're going to receive phone calls. I mean, all these things are going to happen. You guys experiencing that right now? And sometimes those phone calls can be expensive. Sometimes sending that box can be expensive.
Yes.
Okay. But what happens is when you're doing those things, you're doing it because you love him, you want him to be comfortable where he's at. But in doing so, you have to also remember yourself. Because sometimes what we do when we're trying to support someone who is incarcerated, we end up doing more time than they do, because we're feeling bad because we're out here and they're in there. But we have to also remember that it's choices that put our loved ones there. Choices, So while they're in there, you have to remind them, I love you, it is what it is, and we're going to make the best of it. So how do you make the best of it? How do you go about your day-to-day activities? How do you juggle if your income is a certain amount? You've got him to take care of, you've got you to take care of. How do you do it? You got your kids. They're asking, where's daddy? How do you do it? And these are things that we'll talk about. And when you're truly supporting somebody, there's something that you have to be really, really careful of. There are going to be times when, because they're locked up, they're going to be angry when they talk to you. They're going to feel sorry for themselves when they talk to you. They're feeling bad, and they don't do it intentionally, but you're going to start feeling bad. You have to be strong enough to say, wait a minute, stop. We're not going to play this pity party. We're not going to do it. Not today. We're going to talk about what's working in our lives. We're still together. We're not going to dwell on the time that you have to do. We're going to talk about what you're going to do while doing the time. What are you going to do? If you have a husband that can't read very well, encourage him to get into a literacy program. If your husband has a trade and his trade may not be in computers or something, encourage your husband to get into one of the programs in the prison that teaches a trade, gardening, contractor, something. Because what that does is that takes his mind off of the time that he has to serve. You're going to have to redirect him a lot. You're going to have to say, wait a minute, I realize that you're having a bad day. But let me tell you, things out here are going well. The kids are good. change the conversation. The kids are doing good. I'm doing good. You know, what are you doing with your days? Well, I'm stuck in this cell, and I'm this and I'm that, and these guys around here getting on my next page. Pick up a book. Pick up a book. Encourage your husband to do the time. Don't let the time do him. Make sense?
Yes.
You have to speak up. You cannot sit and fall into the trap of feeling sorry for him. Because what you do is wear yourself out. You'll burn yourself out. You've really got to have a conversation with your husband about how you're feeling about things. If the telephone bill is getting to be too much for you, sending the packages are going to be too much for you, and you figure, oh, if he doesn't get it, he's going to be upset. No. He can't be upset. You're doing the best you can. You guys need to have a conversation about how often you're going to visit him, how often you're going to bring the kids, how much money after the household is taken care of can you send without coming up short. If I send him this box, my SMUD is going to be late. If I send him this box, my rent's going to be late. I may not be able to pay my rent. He doesn't need you homeless, and he doesn't need you destitute. He needs you strong. That's why you need to have that conversation with him. You guys need to sit down and go over a budget. If he's working in the prison, he gets a little income. Part of what he gets needs to come home to you to help out, because he is still the man of the house. You don't take all his responsibilities away. You don't do that, because what you're doing is diminishing the man he is. If he sends $15 a month, babe, kids loved it. I took them, we went, got this. Babe, I appreciate it. You know, I know you're doing the best you can, and so are we. You got to learn to use encouraging words. You got to learn to motivate him to want to do more. Because if you just get stuck in where you're at, that's where you'll be. You need to talk about where you're going. If he's got 5 years, I've been serving 11 years with my son. People look at me and say, girl, how you doing it? You look good. Because they expect you to be walking around looking beautiful. They don't expect you to smile. When they say hi, how you doing? Oh, well, you know, my husband's like it. You know, Jenny and I just talked about that. I tell people that my son, he's away. You know, he's away. They'll say, and they already know he's incarcerated. You know, they know he's incarcerated. So why would you ask that? You know, my husband's away in training. He is in training. He's in training on how to come back and lead a productive life and rejoin his family. You know, people say, well, how's he doing? Give him his address and tell him, write him and ask him. Write him and ask him, you know? When we talk about phone calls, if the phone bills are getting to be too much, I remember mine would be 100 this and 100 that, and I'm like, oh, Lord, you know, this is too much for me. So what I did was found a way to talk to my son, which is cheaper. Through Global Telelink has now dropped the prices. You get 15 minutes for $3, where I was paying, what, $15 a call, and my son would call me twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week, depending on what he needed as far as just to talk to me. Now we have an agreement that he calls only when it's important. We write each other. I send him cards. We have other people that write, send cards, and we support him that way. Everybody comes from somewhere. Your husbands have a family. Encourage the families to encourage him. Have them send a card. Have them send $5, $10. You know, when a man is incarcerated, sometimes their pride gets in the way and they don't ask when they need something, really need it. So their families need to step up and help too. You know, yeah, you're his wife, but he still has a family. He still has a family. So these things are important. What we do sometimes is we tend to not say the things that need to be said, and all of a sudden his serving time begins to wear on us. And we begin to wonder why, you know. It's a given. That's where your faith comes in, you know. Bayside, excellent church. Seen them on television, excellent church. You guys need to align yourselves with people that are not going to discourage, but encourage you. You know, we have people who are in recovery, and have you noticed the support around them in their recovery? Okay. You guys need support too. You guys need people to say, hey, come on, let's go to lunch. And go. You know, hey, let's go get our nails done. Go get your nails done. You know, make yourself feel good. Don't feel like, oh, if I do this, I won't be able to send him that. Your husband don't want you broke down, busted, and disgusted. Okay? He wants you looking good. He wants you looking good. And you want to look good. When you look good, you feel good. You have to take care of yourselves. You have to. Because if you don't take care of yourselves, then the kids are going to be neglected. Because if mama's not strong, it affects the family. Yes, the man is the head, but the woman is the neck. Okay? The neck holds that head up. And she's a very important part of the family. Therefore, you've got to be able to, you know, keep his head up. When he sees you walking through that door to see him, each time he sees you, you shouldn't be looking down, you should be looking up. Because this is a lesson. This is a life lesson. You can do it. I've done 11 years. You can do it. It can be done. You guys are married and people say, well, you know, I don't know if I could go 11 years without having sex. Come on now. Am I right or wrong? Okay? Let me tell you something about that part. Because I've dated gentlemen who have been incarcerated, and I wanted to remain faithful. But we're women. We have desires. But let me tell you something. When you surround yourself with positive people, you begin to take up a trade. You start doing things for yourself. That desire. And when you grow spiritually, that desire, God will take care of that. He will. You have to practice celibacy. You have to. And I'll tell you what happens in celibacy. Your mind becomes clear. You begin to control the flesh. The flesh is no longer controlling you. You begin to glow. I'm serious. You begin to glow. People will see something different about you. You know, what's wrong with her? She's taking a new vitamin. You know, what is this? They'll begin to see something different in you because you begin to live a life with a Christ-like mind. I have a husband. I took these vows. Every time you think about it, if that urge comes up, go back and read those vows again. You made a promise, you made a commitment. And for everything that you do for your husband, you may not receive it from him, but there are rewards. You know, there are blessings in it because they're human. You know, my son wrote a poem about how it feels to be caged. And now, every time I go to the zoo, I think about that poem. He says, if you look at the animals and you look at the condors, you know, he says, don't you think that they wish that they could fly? But they can't because they're in captivity. They're there for us to go look at and enjoy. But he says, think about the animals. How do they feel having people walk by throwing peanuts at them? He said, Mama, that's how it feels to be caged. You know, think of the animals in the zoo. So when you think about that, you think about the fact that you don't want to hurt that person. You don't want to hurt them with that. Because I'm going to tell you, whatever you do out here, trust me, somebody is looking to be able to send a letter and tell what you're doing.